Great to have you here in person.
Thank you so much for having me.
In San Francisco.
Indeed, in the epicenter of tech.
And we will get to that. And that is your message to this class of summer 2023. Why so insistent that this group be here in person?
Absolutely. So as you know, Y Combinator funds people at the earliest possible stage, sometimes when it's literally just an idea and a couple co-founders. And so really, in order to go from 0 to 1 to create something that has never existed before, there's nothing like having the energy of people in person, not just right next to each other writing the code and shipping it to users. You know, that you could do from any living room or any bedroom in the world. There's something special about hundreds of founders coming together and actually helping each other. And that's really why YC has been so successful over the number of years.
Well,
it really
we're saying Bay Area, but really the message from you is San Francisco.
Yeah, I think San Francisco in particular with the AI boom is really about Cerebral Valley, which we call Hayes Valley right down the street. There's something very special happening here where literally the foundational models, the open source, the smartest people in the world are sitting in those cafes, having discussions not just about starting their companies, but also what is the cutting edge of what these AI models can do.
Let's go through the mechanics of it. You know, the initial investment pledge is $500,000 to each of the startups, and then a 3-month program, going through the operational side of things. But what happens in that time?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing that's crazy to me is the people who start these companies, they are the most eminent of all of the people who could be starting companies at that moment. So we had more than 24,000 applications for about 240 spots.
24,000 was a record.
That's right. So our acceptance rate was just under 1%, which it's never been as selective as today. But that means that those people in that room, they actually go on to become the most eminent people in startupdom.
Sorry to interrupt, but what does that data represent? If you had the most applications on record and you're accepting the fewest on record, what does that tell you about the big picture of this economy?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're trying to set these founders up for success. And so, if there is ongoing high interest rates, one of the things that we're really trying to focus on is how do we make sure the founders we do fund are the people who are most likely to go on and succeed. And so, in a time of cheap capital, that means that maybe we can fund more people. In a time of more distress, like right now, we have to be much more mindful of what are those businesses and can we see really great revenue, great gross margin? And that's one of the big reasons why today we launched our top companies list that's on our website today.
We can discuss the top companies list. I think I want to go back to the mechanics, because what surprises so many people, whether you call Y Combinator an accelerator or an incubator, it's just a 3-month program. How can you get anything done in that time?
Well, I think the cool thing that I get to do is I get to work with 12 of some of my closest friends who are known as group partners. And the big thing that's different now is actually, as CEO, I am actually also a group partner. So we actually have 13 people working with the companies. And so these are some of the people who literally worked with these top revenue and top valuation companies from the 0 to 1 stage, literally a few people just starting out. For me, I got the privilege of working with Apoorva Mehta from Instacart, or Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, or Kyle Vogt from Cruise Automation. These are all companies that have gone on to sort of change both their industry but also tech broadly. But I can't tell you how crazy it is to meet people when it's literally a YC application on the web. And that's really, I think, one of the great innovations of our time that Paul Graham, the founder of YC, came up with. Here's this website where you can go to ycombinator.com/apply, and anyone with an idea anywhere in the world on the internet can apply, and someone will go and read it, and our community will figure out, hey, should this person be a part of our community?
Of the 24,000 that applied and then the 240 that were accepted, I guess the question goes to, what do they have in common? Or paradoxically, are any of them not AI companies?
Oh, yeah. So actually only 35% of the companies in this batch are specifically AI focused. I'd say maybe half of them have some AI component. YC has always been generalist. That's how YC was able to fund Coinbase really even years before anyone had even heard of Bitcoin. And I think the key message here is that the best people in the world to sort of create these startups are actually the technologists, the builders who are just a few people writing lines of code. It's a very fringe thing. And what YC does is take people who otherwise would be on the fringe, but they're some of the most technically and engineering-wise brilliant people in the world, and we sort of teach them how the pieces move. We teach them chess, the part of building a business that, frankly, is the easier part to being highly technical and being on the cutting edge of what's happening in technology.
Gary, how do you ensure you've got the funds to deploy every year for 2 programs? Is there still LP interest in backing you?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the amazing things about YC is if you look at every single top venture capital firm in the world, pretty much all of them have a YC company that is either on their homepage or often multiple of them that have become fund returners for those VC funds. So to me, YC
are they becoming LPs in themselves? I mean, where are you getting the funds from? Generally speaking,
all the same kind of limited partners that you would expect in venture capital, and that makes sense because YC to me is actually the fountain of prosperity for this type of activity in the world.
2 pieces of news. So we've got through the class of summer 2023. You're also publishing this list of the top net revenue generating companies you backed in 2022. Private or otherwise. Why? I mean, those are 2 different scales, ends of the scale.
Yeah. The reality is, and this is no news to anyone, 2021 was such an extreme sort of time. And one of the things that we became very concerned about, because we actually want to be a bellwether of trying to teach the next generation what they should focus on, there was this over-reliance on thinking about what's my next round. The fast money meant that you were going to chase top-line metrics, growth at all costs. And, of course, now we're on the other side of a very deep hangover about that. And so we thought, how do we, as a community, put forward the things that founders and people who are sort of creating this technology, what should they be thinking about? And right now, now more than ever, it's about gross margin. It's actually about net revenue. Sort of, one of the things I'm calling it is literally edible revenue. And one of the wild things.
What do you mean by edible revenue?
Oh, just can you pay people? Can you, pay salaries? Can you actually run your operations on this revenue? And what's funny is looking at the different financial and accounting sort of shenanigans that people pull, often it's about sort of hiding this number. So I think maybe we should make this an industry standard. Like, whether or not it's a marketplace or, there are lots of different specific accounting rules for specific comps, but why is that? Shouldn't we just use one metric that actually will allow founders to make the right decision, which is to build great, sustainable companies and know that they can grow over the long term?
We should talk about San Francisco and where to build for the long term. I mean, your position on this city is well known, but as of today, where's your head at?
Yeah, absolutely. The great thing about San Francisco to me is that it gave me everything I have. I learned to code in the city, taking BART into Potrero Hill in Web 1.0. I learned how to make database-backed websites. And what I realize is San Francisco and the Bay Area is the place that is the magnet for all of the most technical people in the world. And when you have those type of agglomeration effects, when you have all the smartest, most brilliant, most driven people in the world coming here, of course they're going to create wealth.
But we have problems as well, and you've been very vocal acknowledging them.
Absolutely.
And I guess where my question goes is how much more deeply you would be involved in political cycles, putting money into initiatives and candidates, you yourself being involved in politics.
Well, some of my friends started an organization called Grow SF, which is one of the most important things. How do we take really some of the smartest people who have created this wealth, and how do we have an impact that's positive on our local economy? We want that wealth to actually be shared with everyone. I think a lot of people criticize tech and tech people broadly as sort of Ayn Randian libertarians, and speaking for myself and my friends, we're not Randians. We're Gene Roddenberry type of, Gene Roddenberry is sort of our spiritual future. What we believe is Starfleet Academy was in San Francisco for a reason, and we can actually build San Francisco into San Francisco if we actually have the right policies and the right politicians in place. And in November of 2024, I think if you follow Grow SF, you'll see our plan to make that happen.
This is the first opportunity I've had to speak to you since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, and the commonality of Y Combinator is that SVB was often the first institution to write a check. Bloomberg reported last week that the FDIC had mistakenly released this document to our news organization that revealed the backstop on all depositors with balances exceeding 250,000 was also inclusive of Sequoia and many large tech startups that didn't need it, frankly. And you were an advocate for that initiative in the first place, on the smaller side of things. What's your kind of thoughts on that and reaction?
Absolutely. I think the hard part about SVB is that it really did hit the little guy. What I realized for us, YC has funded over 4,000 companies. And of course, the top 100, top 200 are some of the biggest names that you could think of. But what the backstop was really about was saving the tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses that literally would not be able to make payroll. And I think this fact coming out doesn't change any of that. We would have set back technology, perhaps 5 years, perhaps a decade, if you just suddenly killed at a very early stage of company. And so I hear that argument, but the truth remains that there were hundreds of thousands of jobs that were saved in that moment, and I think the Fed and the FDIC and the people in charge, they did the right thing.
Garry, when I think of you, I think also about Initialized, and you returned to YC in January. You were the key man alongside Alexis Ohanian, and you've kind of come back to YC quickly. How did that conversation go with LPs of Initialized, and is it now just all Alexis at Initialized?
Oh, so Alexis left to start his own fund called 776 a number of years ago. The new managing partners are Brett Gibson and Jen Wolfe. They've done an incredible job. I mean, the number one thing I love is that in venture, the best and highest to me is not to elevate a single person, but to really create an institution that lasts well beyond anyone who sort of started the business. And I looked at Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston, who created YC for us. They're still there, but they made space for what is now an institution, and I am merely the steward of that institution going forward.